and thank you so much for tuning into A Voice for All. I am your host, Jamila Gamble, and I trust your week has been fantastic. On tonight's episode, we have a fantastic lady. Fantastic is the word of the night, by the way, if you haven't tuned in yet. But Tracie comes from the Monarch House, which is doing so much when it comes to creating awareness and services for individuals and their families with disabilities. So I am so excited to have her on because it's just bringing more, like I said, awareness to those families who are unaware of certain services that are right in our backyard. So join me in welcoming Tracie to A Voice for All. How are you doing, Tracie?
I'm fine, thank you.
You're in the hot seats.
I am.
It's all you. So you come with a wealth of experience. How did you get into this field to begin with?
How did I get into field? That's a really good question. I went through undergraduate school at University of Toronto and thought I was going to go into medicine. Started out in that path, actually did some medical research, and then decided that really wasn't what I wanted, that I wanted more contact.
Yeah.
And I wanted to work with children. So looked at my prerequisites and found out that I had all the prerequisites to get into speech pathology. So applied and got in. Didn't really know what that was until I landed in graduate school. So that was a bit interesting, but loved it. And really it was more what I wanted to do. I wanted to work with children and help children. And during that time in graduate school, really took an interest in developmental disabilities, into learning disabilities, and into autism spectrum disorder.
Yeah, I was wondering that. I'm like, how do you start off in medicine and then go into speech and language and then end up working with individuals who have disabilities? That's quite the transition, one might think.
It is, although when I graduated from speech pathology, I went to UBC and fully planned on staying in Vancouver, but there were no jobs, and I did a placement, my last placement actually, at the Peel Board of Ed, and they offered me a job right away, and so I stayed. I moved back to Ontario where my family was and worked with the school board, and had the fortune really of working with some amazing teachers and working with special needs, and really learning about, you know, what type of job that was and what we could do as a team. Back then, there was a lot of direct therapy. You were team teaching with teachers, and so you really could affect a lot of change.
So when you were working within that environment, at any point did you realize, you know what, I like to start something of my own? Like, did that entrepreneur bug hit you?
Yes, but it hit me because at that time, you know, I don't want to date myself, but like late 80s, early 90s, the economy really changed. And so school boards really had to cut back on services. And we went from doing direct therapy to being consultants. Wow. And that really wasn't for me. I really missed doing direct therapy.
Okay, so you said it wasn't for you, but for a child who is depending on that type of service, how would you describe what they may have been going through in the classroom? In 1 minute they're getting this direct kind of therapy, and the next minute it's like this, okay, we'll see you in 3 weeks kind of visit.
Yeah, I mean, you could certainly tell there was a whole shift, and that for the children, you know, the IEPs were really getting going, and meeting goals were, you know, just really starting, and so then you started to see that you were spending more time in meetings and assessments, and really trying to consult with a teacher who was quickly being overloaded with the amount of work they had to do, and with meeting the needs of everybody in their classroom. And so really, you know, you could see children not making the progress that they had previously. So
and from back in the day till now, has that really changed?
No, I would actually unfortunately say it's gotten worse.
Yeah, I would second that wholeheartedly. Sorry. But I have to, because you know, as you know, I'm also in the field as well. And I'm looking at how things are being done, and I'm like, are we really even tapping into their full potential? No,
unfortunately we're not. And it's really difficult because disabilities are increasing. Right, disabilities are increasing, parents are working more than ever, and so to access other services even becomes difficult in a day. And school boards are changing, they're trying to do their best with what they have, but there's still a pretty closed system, and so, you know, and it's a big system, they're large systems. And so to affect any kind of real change in curriculum or change in services takes years and years. And so it's a negative impact on everybody in the school.
So for families who may be watching, and maybe they're going through their own frustrations with whatever system they may be in, what would you recommend to them to do at home, or how should they find more resources?
That's really difficult, because even for professionals in the field, it is really difficult to figure out what all the resources are. And I mean, in my area, where Monarch House is in Oakville, it's taken me years practicing in that area to actually find all the resources.
Wow.
Because things keep changing, and the ministry, government, they try and make things easy for families, but there's not like a 1-800 number that you can call for all services.
No.
There's and a lot of times there's services out there, but they're not well publicized, and so it's a real burden on families.
This is why we have a voice for all.
Absolutely.
To make it more, accessible for them. But I can imagine how some of these families, especially families who are just entering the system right now, or the families who have students who are 21 and are just graduating. Now what?
Right.
Now what?
So I mean, I think you get in touch with local services, so local groups, so the Down Syndrome Association in your area, the Autism Ontario Association or chapter in your area, community living in your area. I mean, you're going to have to try and get to those places that then can connect you to other places.
It's going to take some work.
It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work for families who are already stretched, already tired, to do all that. And then a lot of times there's still barriers. There's waiting list barriers. You don't meet intake criteria for whatever reason. For any private services, there's financial barriers a lot of times. And so again, they're still not going to get all the services they need. And it really, in Ontario, there were real plans for local health integration networks, and there would be a community hub, and all services would be. No, it hasn't happened. No, we're still working on it.
So back to your entrepreneur bug, you saw what was happening, or the lack of what was happening. Who did Tracie become after that?
So Tracie became an independent speech pathologist. When I left, I worked at Peel Board, and then I went over to Dufferin Peel for a while and started their autism team.
Okay.
And so worked in an interdisciplinary team. There was a social worker, there was a child and youth worker, and myself, and a teacher, and really liked that model. But again, at that point, we had the whole board to cover. And so you're just consulting. You're not really affecting a lot of change. So I decided I'd open a speech pathology private practice. And I can remember my going away party that schools love doing, and them saying, "Are you sure you're going to do this? Are you sure there's enough work for you?" And little did we know
there was going to be
more work than anybody could handle. So started my private practice and really started to hone my skills as a therapist. And really, I'd always been very scientific, with medical research, so always took data, tried to see, what I was doing, what I was taught, was it effective? And after a few years began to really rethink some of the things I was doing.
And that's a sign of a true professional when that happens.
Well, I mean, I guess it's, especially there's a lot of pressure when you're in private and people are paying and watching, and you're needing outcomes, or, at least for me, I needed outcomes because I wanted the families to see the benefit. And everybody has, limited funds, and so you want to do the best. And so really, I started to rethink things, and I was working with a lot of individuals with autism at that time because I had, through the school board, my name got around, and we were running social skills groups, and I had other speech pathologists working for me. And so then, I guess fortunately, a couple of my clients at the time were bringing in big companies from the US to do applied behavior analysis.
Wow.
And it was before the province actually had any services in behavior analysis. And so asked if I would like training. And I was pretty skeptical. I was actually pretty negative about it originally. But agreed to go and see what it was about and support the families. And it actually changed my life. So,
it's amazing those things that we found, at first too, and then through a little bit more exposure, how that just changes the whole perspective. as you can tell, Tracie and I still have a lot to talk about. If you have questions, you want to connect with Tracie, all the information is below. If you want to send me a message to get in touch with Tracie for you, you can always contact me at the Jam fan page, facebook.com/Ms. Jam Gamble. You could always contact me at Twitter at Ms. Jam PCCS. I am connected to these people. So, Tracie and I are talking about how hard it is for families to find these resources. And sometimes it's not as easy as going into the phone book, looking under disabilities, and all the services are listed there. Sometimes it takes someone finding those resources for you. So that's why I encourage you to contact me, contact the information below, and I will connect you to professionals like Tracie. We still have quite a bit to talk about. We're going to be learning more about the Monarch House after the break. And as Tracie said earlier on, it is set in Oakville. And again, for those of you who are in the Peel region, sometimes you have to travel a little bit further to get those good services. So after the break, we will be continuing with our guest here, Tracie, and talking more about Monarch House. This is a good opportunity for families who are looking for new services, especially if you have a graduate who just turned 21 and they're phasing out of the school system, knowing what your options are, meeting new contacts, and getting ready for what's ahead. So stay tuned. We'll see you after the break. Welcome back to A Voice for All. If you're just tuning in, welcome. We're very glad to have you. And in our last segment, our guest was Tracie, who is still here with us. We first spoke about who she is, how she got into this field, because we are always so interested to know what makes a person want to get into the field of disabilities. If you want to get in touch with me or Tracie, information is below. Facebook page, join the Jam fan, facebook.com/Ms. Jam Gamble, or you can tweet me at Ms. Jam PCCS. If you want to get in touch with Tracie, her information will be at the bottom of the screen as well, so be sure to connect. So like I said before, we were talking about who is Tracie, but now we're going to talk about the Monarch House. It's not a butterfly conservatory. No. What is the Monarch House?
So Monarch House is an interdisciplinary treatment center for children with disabilities, for children and adolescents, and in BC for adults as well.
Oh, okay.
So it was started in 2009 in British Columbia, and there's currently 7 sites in BC. And this is the first one in Ontario.
Why only the first one?
Well, because it's a starting.
Okay,
so,
okay.
Yes.
So we're excited then.
We're excited. So we brought it to Ontario, further refine the model, and see what what services are required here, because it varies province to province.
Okay.
And then look at expanding across Canada.
So in comparison to BC, what do we need in Ontario?
So we have different needs in Ontario. So number one, we have to take into account how far people commute, your geographic area that people are willing to commute to or from. We have to look at funding, because in British Columbia, the funding for autism treatment is very different than the funding here in Ontario. Yes and no.
Okay.
Different. So every child diagnosed with autism in British Columbia gets funding up to the age of 6.
Okay.
They're funded for 10 hours a week of intensive behavior intervention.
That's pretty good.
Pretty good.
Okay. Okay.
Pretty good. It's kind of the minimum that's recommended.
Do we have that in Ontario though?
We have a version of it in Ontario.
Okay, because if I remember correctly, I feel like there's something, but not
Right. So in Ontario, we fund the government funds 20 hours a week, 20 to 25, depending on what service you're getting. But it's funded, there's a long waiting list. And so it can take you 2.5, 3 years to get funding. 5 years in some places, yes. And then you get 2 to 3 years max of funding, but there's no age limit on Ontario.
Okay.
So it doesn't just cut off at 6.
Okay.
But in British Columbia, it also funds, that money also funds occupational therapy and speech therapy, and funds it up to the age of 18. So after 6 years of age, the amount drops. You get a lesser amount, but you're funded up to 18 every year. And we have no funding like that in Ontario.
I'm listening to that. I'm like, let's pack up and move to BC. You know, especially with the speech and language, because for so many families, they want to hear their child speak. Yep. Even just saying, "Hi, Mom, I love you, Mom." They want that. So, BC, way to go.
Yeah. So that's the first question I always get asked: when will my child talk? Right. And so it's really hard to you know, want to work on that, want to see the child, know what the evidence says, know what science says that we need to do, how much intensity we need, and then know that the parents are mortgaging their houses, you know, living in small apartments, moving back in with their parents. You know, one parent is moved away to work to fund private therapy. And so we, at Monarch House, it's all privately funded, and so we're really aware of that. So we really try and work with families and to, you know, come up with, help them with all the government funding that's available and see what we can do and make choices for them.
So what's the criteria for a family to get admitted into Monarch House to get the services?
They can call.
Okay.
Yeah. So we don't have any criteria about funding or about diagnosis.
What about if the diagnosis is unknown?
Doesn't matter.
Wow.
Yeah. So we have free screening clinics the last Thursday morning of every month.
Okay.
We'll have a behavior analyst there, a speech pathologist, an occupational therapist. Families can drop in and see, you know, I have a concern. Should I be concerned? So
that's like a one-stop shop, no? Because I feel with some of the families I'm working with this year, they go to location A, and then they have to go to location B, and then they have to set up an appointment with the person over at C, and then maybe next year we're getting a diagnosis. Like, would you say the process is faster at Monarch House, slightly?
Absolutely faster. If you have the funding, if you have the means, absolutely, you can start tomorrow. We have availability, and because we're private, we have the availability to add staff, add professionals as we need it, right? So we have a process. So it starts with the free screening, absolutely no obligation. It really, it's to confirm or help you make choices as to, do you need a speech assessment? Do you need an occupational therapy assessment? Is your child developing typically? Or do you need to go to your developmental pediatrician or your family physician and get
that was going to be my question with the screening. How many families, what's their attitude when they're coming to the screening? Because I've seen some students, we could tell, for example, they're on the spectrum, but getting their parents to even see that, how do you see those families?
So the people who come to us, though, are the parents who already have a good idea that there's something wrong. And there's lots of research now. There's some really nice new research out that's saying, even like physicians, speech pathologists, occupational therapists, we need to listen to families.
Yes,
that
absolutely.
Their gut tells them that something's wrong, so that means there's something wrong.
Right.
You know, very rarely in my career have I seen a family who's come in and said, you know, I think there's something wrong, and then we do assessment and say, yeah, actually, we can't find anything.
Right.
Typically, it's the opposite. You're absolutely right. You need to start now. Early intervention is key, and you know, let us help you figure out which services you need, because it's always better to have cohesive, integrated services. You know, we pick a couple goals, and then we all work towards the same goal. We don't, and the parent isn't going, like you said, here for speech, there for OT, here for behavior services.
Right here.
It's all together. And one of the things that we know helps immensely with outcomes is parent involvement.
Oh my goodness. Parents are the experts.
Parents are the experts.
Parents are the experts.
Yeah, and parents need coaching. They need training.
So with the parents, do you guys offer any services for the parents?
So we do parent training,
Okay.
coaching. We will go into your house. There's often lots of difficulties with feeding disorders.
Yes.
There's lots of difficulties with behavior at home. And so there's no manual for parents. There's no manual for typical kids, but there's certainly no manual when your child isn't behaving like everybody else's child. And so we will go in and we will assess the problem there, because often the problem is different in different environments.
I've noticed that. I've noticed that.
So we'll go in to see, you know, what's happening in therapy and working in our center may not actually be what we need to do in the home. And so it's not fair to tell a parent, you need to just do this, and then not be there with them and coach them through it. And so we will go into the home and help them and coach them. We will go into, if we're allowed to, we'll go into a school. We'll partner with community agencies.
That's fantastic.
So really it's about, you know, giving them that team, being that gap between public services and really forming that integrated team so that we get the best outcomes.
So I'm trying to ask, like, what doesn't Monarch House do? Because you were just telling me there's an indoor park being built. What would that be used for?
So we're having an indoor playground being built, like your big ones that you go to birthday parties, and it will be used for a number of things.
There will be a ball pit?
There's a bouncy castle part. There's a covered circular slide.
Can adults fit?
Yes. Because we have to be able to go and get the kids.
Fantastic. I'll be there.
Okay. So yeah, so it's for our children that are in treatment. We have some kids that come for 30, 35 hours a week. It's like their school, right?
Oh my goodness, yes.
So they need a place to play.
Okay.
We know that reinforcement, you know, giving kids stuff they like doing helps learning. It's also for parents who have children that are maybe really difficult to take out into the community, but they want to have that birthday party so that they can come. Our families can come and use that.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. The birthday party aspect, it's like, I didn't even know you guys did that. That is great. If you need a birthday party location, Monarch House, that is, wow. We literally have 2 minutes. How can the community help Monarch House?
So I think the way the community can help Monarch House, and how we can help the community as well, is that they can share the information with their families, but also come and partner with us. CBI Health Group, which owns Monarch House, is very community oriented. We want Monarch House to be the community's house. So if you need a space, you know, to do a presentation or to meet with families, or if a group of teenagers need a place to meet, it's available. It's available free.
Wow.
So it's really built to support the community. And the company is very much behind that, to be a part of the community.
Well, Monarch House, I am so overwhelmed with like excitement that we had them on, because I have parents asking me all the time, where can I find services? Where can I find help? Apparently Monarch House is like that huge mall in Alberta that has everything in one. There are places for birthday parties, there are services for parents, there are services for your children, there's community partnerships, there is everything that you need. And again, if you are a parent who has a child with disabilities, sometimes you will have to travel. Sometimes you may have to go a little bit further than you have to get the good services. So thank you, Tracie, so much for being on A Voice for All. Be sure to connect with Tracie and the Monarch House and myself if you need any additional resources. That's why we have A Voice for All. We are here to help you. I truly hope you enjoyed this week's show, and I will catch you guys next week. Take care.